everyone, and welcome to Mathemagical Times. Mathemagical Times is a brand new program the library is doing with Math Amigos, an organization here in Santa Fe dedicated to improving math achievement. If you haven't signed up for the program and are interested, please visit the Santa Fe Public Library's website for information about the program and instructions on how to register. In this video, I'm going to be doing a couple of things. I will read a story, pausing every once in a while to ask you some questions. And after I read the story, I will do some activities and you can join along. To do these activities, you're going to need a couple of pieces of paper, a pencil, a pen, or some markers. Okay, ready? Here we go. One of the things I want you to think about is, what does it mean to be generous? Okay, so put your thinking caps on. The title of this book is The Lion's Share, a tale of having cake and eating it too, written by Mathemagical. Here we go. Every year at the start of spring, the lion invited a small group of animals to join him for a special dinner. The ant had never dined with the king before. She was very nervous and wanted to make a good impression. When the day came, she arrived exactly on time. Not a minute too soon or too late. Sometime later, the beetle arrived, the macaw, the tortoise, the hippo, then the frog, the warthog, the gorilla, and the elephant. And they were all late. When dinner was served, the ant was shocked at how the others behaved. The elephant constantly talked about himself. The hippo never wiped her mouth. The gorilla threw his food. And the warthog tried to eat the flowers. What strange manners, thought the ant. She looked to the lion, but he said nothing. After dinner, the table was cleared and a large cake was brought out for dessert. The lion passed it to the elephant. "Please help yourself," he said. The elephant looked at the cake. "I could eat this in one bite," he thought, but that might seem greedy. With a grand gesture, he cut the cake in half and passed the rest to the hippo. "What a pig," thought the hippo. "But if he's taking half, I'm taking half of what's left." She made a slice down the middle and handed the remaining 1/4 of the cake to the gorilla. This continued around the table as each animal took half of the remaining cake and passed the rest on. Until it finally reached the ant. As she struggled to cut the tiny slice in two, it crumbled to pieces on her plate. All the animals turned to her. "Typical ant," said the elephant. "She thinks only of herself. When the cake came to me, I shared it." "I know," said the hippo. "We all did." "Doesn't she know the king hasn't eaten yet?" scoffed the tortoise. The warthog who was sitting in her cake, simply shook her head in disgust. The ant was mortified. She would never be invited back. "My king," said the ant, "please forgive me. I'm ashamed to say there is nothing left to share. But if you will allow, it would be my honor to bake a special strawberry sponge cake just for you tomorrow. It is my grandmother's recipe, and I think you will enjoy it." The king smiled. "Thank you," he said. "You're very generous." "Who does she think she is?" thought the beetle. He scampered over to the lion's plate. "My king, to show my thanks, I would like to bake you 2 cakes tomorrow. Double fudge chocolate." "Hey, king," said the frog, "I'm going to bake you 4 raspberry layer cakes tomorrow. That's twice as many." "I can top that," announced the macaw. "I shall bake the king twice as many carrot cakes, 8, and he shall have them tomorrow." "Then I'll bake twice as many mud cakes," snorted the warthog. "How many is that exactly?" 16, said the tortoise. "Really?" said the warthog. "That sounds like a lot." "Maybe for you," said the tortoise, "but I will happily bake twice that. 32 apple walnut cakes will be ready by tomorrow afternoon." The gorilla looked at the tortoise. He didn't like the tortoise. And although the gorilla had never baked anything ever before, he somehow found himself offering twice as many crumb cakes. 64, asked the king. "Are you sure?" The gorilla nodded, but he didn't look so sure. All eyes turned to the hippo. "Naturally, it will be my honor to bake twice as many spice cakes. Let me see." She took out a piece of paper and began to scribble some numbers. Her hoof was shaking as she put down the pencil. "This can't be right," she said finally. The gorilla grabbed the piece of paper. 128, he announced with a grin. The elephant was crestfallen, but he had to top the hippo. Elephants were twice as good as hippos. With a deep breath, he announced, "And I, the great elephant, shall bake twice as many as the hippo. 246 peanut butter pound cakes." 256, corrected the tortoise. "Oh, for goodness sake," cursed the elephant. That's a lot of cakes. That night, the ant baked her cake for the king. She took her time and measured everything carefully. She spread the frosting as smoothly as she could, then decorated the top with sprinkles. It was a very fine cake. The next morning, she delivered it to the king. The elephant and the hippo and the gorilla, they don't look so happy, do they? "Such a fine cake," said the lion. Won't you share it with me? And that's the end of the story. So now we're going to do a couple of activities. You'll need those 2 pieces of paper and a pencil, pen, or marker. The first thing we're going to do is figure out how much cake is left after each animal takes his or her own. Here we go. So the elephant took half the cake, right? So there was 1 cake. And after the elephant took his half, there was half left. How did we get to that? 1 minus half equals half. Okay. So then it was the hippo's turn. He cut the half of the cake in half, leaving a quarter. And how did we get to that? Well, a half is 2 quarters. And if we take away 1 quarter, which is half of 2 quarters, we're left with 1 quarter. So then it was the gorilla's turn. He took half of 1 quarter, leaving 1/8. So a quarter, which is what he started with, is 2/8. Take away 1/8, right? Dividing it in half leaves 1/8. The tortoise takes half of 1/8. That leaves 1/16. Because 1/8 is 2/16 minus 1/16 equals 1/16. The warthog starts out with 1/16, takes half of that, he's left with 1/32. 1/16 is 2/32. Take 1 away, we're left with 1/32. Okay, cut that in half, and the macaw is left with 1/64. How did that happen? 1/32 is really 2/64. Take away 1/64, which equals 1/64. That cake is getting smaller and smaller. So the frog comes along. He takes 1/2 of 1/64, leaving 1/128. That's pretty tiny. 1/128, or rather 1/64, sorry, is really 2/128. Take away half of that, right? We're taking 1 from the 2, leaving 1/128. Really tiny, meaning the ant ended up with what? Crumbs. That's all. divide up the crumbs. What do you think of that? Smaller and smaller and smaller. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we are going to see the number of cakes that the king was promised, animal by animal. So, the ant promised 1 cake. And then the beetle came along and said, I will double that. So the beetle promised 2 cakes. Because 1 cake times 2 equals 2. Then the frog came along and he promised 4 cakes. Getting to that by saying, I'll double what the beetle said. 2 cakes times 2 equals 4. The macaw, not to be outdone, said, I'll double that. I'll bring 8 cakes. 4 times 2 equals 8. And then that old warthog, he said, I'm going to double that. So he had to make 16 cakes. 8 times 2 equals 16. And then the tortoise said, I'm going to double that too. So I have to make 32 cakes. So he looked at the 16 cakes the warthog was going to make, and he doubled it, and that came out to 32. And then the gorilla. I don't think the gorilla was too happy, but everybody else was doubling, so he had to go along. So he had to make 64. Right? He got to that by taking the 32 the tortoise had promised and multiplying that by 2 and getting to 64. Ah, sighed the hippo. He wasn't thrilled, but he had to double it too. So the hippo ended up promising 128 cakes. He took the 64 cakes that the gorilla had promised and multiplied by 2, getting to 128. And then the poor elephant, wow, he looked at 128, said, I have to double that. And remember, he first thought it was 254, but he got corrected. It's 256. How did he get to that? He took the 128 that the hippo promised, multiplying that by 2, and coming up with, you got it, 256. That's a lot of cakes to bake. But get this. Only the ant ended up bringing a cake, or so that's how the story ends. So the lion really only ate 1/2 of the cake the ant brought. But if everybody had brought all of their cakes, it would have been 511 cakes. Even half that number, if the lion had shared with each, would have still been a really big tummy ache. Right? So this has been quite fun. We've done a lot. Think again about what it means to be generous. I hope you've had some fun. I think we all deserve a big hand. Don't forget to pick up your math kit and join us on Friday for the Zoom session to talk about these activities and the activities in the kits. And if you have any questions about the books or the activities or anything else, you can email me at library@santafenm.gov. That's library@santafenm.gov. Well, that's it for now. Until next time, I hope you have some fun mathematical times. Bye-bye.